Hello and a very warm welcome to this edition of Europe Now. June 2016, the UK voted to leave the EU 52 to 48%. A nation divided, a union broken. A year on, the UK has yet to leave the EU or even begin negotiations concerning its departure. So we've come to see what people here think about their decision today and what they think the future may hold for their country. We begin with a look at the political landscape here in the UK, a very different picture from this time last year. We're gearing up for snap general elections called for by Conservative Prime Minister Theresa May. She's hoping to strengthen her support in Parliament as she begins those Brexit negotiations. Indeed, the Tory party wanting to capitalise on struggles in other political parties here, caused to some extent from that Brexit vote. Here's our report by Luke Brown.
A rendezvous outside the Lion pub for these Labour Party activists in Bristol. The local Labour candidate Thangam Debonair and her team are canvassing door to door. Last year, Bristol voted massively in favour of staying in the EU, 62% choosing Remain. It's still a key campaign issue here, 1 year on.
And people here want me to fight as hard as possible for us to remain as close as possible to the European Union. And now what they're talking about is they want all possible options kept on the table, and they're very unhappy about the fact that Theresa May has basically ruled most of them out.
The Labour Party, though, has been divided on a national level by the question of Brexit. Many moderate voters here are happy with their MP, but not convinced by the party's leftist leader, Jeremy Corbyn.
It's probably a lot more likely that you'll get in than that Jeremy Corbyn will get in, isn't it? How do you feel about that?
I think...
Are you expecting to be a strong opposition, or are you hoping to actually win?
I'm focused on representing my seat. And the seat that I've been really happy to represent for the last 2 years. I think I've done a good job representing people of Bristol West on Brexit, you know, on standing against...
Sounds like you're almost saying we should vote for you, don't worry, you won't have Corbyn.
It's all I've got.
All about you.
All I've got to offer you here in this seat is Labour values and a Labour record and what I've done.
Bristol, though, bucked the broader trend in England over Brexit. 150 kilometres north, the situation in Walsall is very different. The town voted 68% in favour of leaving the EU in last year's referendum. It's traditionally a Labour stronghold, but voters here feel abandoned by the mainstream parties. Many are still tempted by the UKIP vote in the general election.
I've always been Labour. I don't hate foreigners and all that works, but I think UKIP are in the right frame of mind to look after their own, which is me and you.
Labour Party, you can forget about them anyway now, because they might have good policies, but people are not going to vote for Jeremy Corbyn to be Prime Minister.
For the two local UKIP candidates, channeling that anger is key. But the anti-Europe party has proved unable to capitalise on its Brexit success as it sees UKIP policies adopted by the Tory Prime Minister, Theresa May.
Brexit was ours, do you know what I mean? There was no Tory fighting for Brexit for the last 20 years. They only woke up 12 months ago. Now they're trying to protect our vouchers. She's doing a good job in the sense that she's trying to say that she's now the party of Brexit and she's going to deliver. Do we believe that? Well, a lot of us don't, and what my point is, please don't be conned by it.
Walsall's two parliamentary seats have been Labour since the 1970s. The Conservative candidate, James Bird, is here to woo some traditional Tory voters at the local church.
Can we know a little bit more about you? Because we don't know anything about you.
Right.
We're to vote. Do you live in Walsall?
So I'm from Sutton Coldfield down the road. So yeah, brought up in Sutton Coldfield.
The Tories are actively angling to poach the voters who chose UKIP at the last election, insisting they're the only party that can make a success of Brexit.
I think UKIP as a force, clearly, in terms of coming out of the EU, that's now on a journey, and therefore their main priority or their main policy is now no longer relevant, essentially. So it's now a question, as I said, who's best to deliver that Brexit scenario? And Theresa May stands head and shoulders above all the leaders of all the other parties.
That strategy appears to be paying off. Polls indicate the Tories are on course for victory. The Prime Minister wants a strong result to gain leverage in talks with Europe and raise hopes for Brexit supporters that they can have their cake and eat it.
Dr. Tannock, lovely to see you again.
Eve, lovely to see you too.
Dr. Charles Tannock, a London MEP for the Conservative Party. Dr. Tannock, you campaigned really strongly for that Remain vote. The country decided to go the other way. And now we've just been looking at, the snap elections that have been called. Why was there a need to call those snap elections?
Well, I think Theresa May felt that she needed to have a stronger hand for her negotiations with a bigger majority so that she can go confidently in to negotiate and bat for Britain. So I understand that.
Does it necessarily mean that Theresa May, the Prime Minister, is looking to have more power, to have a harder Brexit?
Well, I hope not. I mean, obviously, I'm not Theresa May, but I hope that by having a strong majority, she will feel confident enough to sort of face down the hardliners, the really extreme Brexiteers, and negotiate a good deal.
Is the UK ready for those talks?
Well, there's no doubt that nothing would have happened before the French election. Of course, I'm overjoyed that Monsieur Macron has become president, because I think that the whole European Union 27 has been kick-started. Clearly, some of the hardline Brexiteers are very disappointed that we have a Macron in France. Mrs May is only too well aware of the fact that she has a united 27 that she has to negotiate with. I think having this strong majority and a united 27, people can do business.
A lot to come, but you've brought us here to Battersea, a region of London that voted overwhelmingly to stay.
75%, one of the highest, and it's a Conservative seat as well. Lovely to see you, Minister. Jane, how are you? Lovely to be in your patch.
Thank you very much for coming to help.
Anthony, lovely to see you. Peter,
Peter, my local councillor. About 15% of the people in this ward are actually EU nationals. Quite a lot of interest in the doorstep in, obviously, an early settlement of the rights.
Yeah, well, I'm very pleased my wife became British this week. She swore the oath, but she's an EU citizen, she's dual national.
Well, my husband too. He's a Greek citizen. And he naturalised last year.
A huge number of the doctors and nurses come from the European Union. 15% of all academics.
I campaign very vigorously for Remains because people's businesses and livelihoods and our future prosperity depend on us knuckling down. I've basically turned, to a more practical approach and said, look, it's not where I wanted to end up, but it's where we are. This is Charles Tannock, who's one of our members of the European Parliament.
We voted to stay in, unfortunately, but
it went the other way,
and we've got to live with it.
Yeah.
And I think until they actually get the nitty-gritty, because nobody really knows what's going to happen.
You want to send us to another door, Anthony?
I can't vote because I'm German.
We've got an awful lot of EU citizens live in this area and make a huge contribution to the area, to our community, and we want to make sure that if people want to settle, and we can get that done as easily as possible.
Well, we've now come to a market in central London, in Chelsea, and this market really is a mix of, the finest British produce, but also the French right alongside it. Do you fear, Mr. Tannock, that Brexit could impact on that and maybe decrease the amount of cultural diversity in the city?
I doubt it very much. London is more robust than that. London has a very ancient tradition of absorbing different cultures. So no, I think that we will obviously carry on eating and enjoying French cuisine, European food, particularly, spaghetti is a national dish. But of course the prices will go up because there may well be tariffs.
Yeah, even this idea in your party, the Tory manifesto, that, if we hire EU citizens to work, it could be £2,000 of a tax on that?
The way that it's been introduced at the moment is for non-EU, it's not for the EU. Non-EU citizens will have this surcharge to employers of £2,000, but of course once Brexit happens, everybody will be non-EU, so there will be a surcharge presumably applied to Europeans in the same way, unless again something is negotiated. If Europeans stop coming, we still need a lot of labour in this country, unskilled labour in particular. The United Kingdom will have to recruit in the Commonwealth and other countries, and I'm not quite sure that's what they voted for, people, to change the pattern of immigration. Is
Brexit definitely going to happen, or is there still a chance to change?
Oh, I think it's definitely going to happen. I think the resolve of the government's absolutely clear. I think it would be tragic if we have the hardest Brexit. I am very lucky. I now have an Irish passport, so I'm all right personally. Again, but not many Brits have that option.
Here in London, actually, over 1 million people are EU nationals. That's much higher than the percentage percentage across the rest of the country. It runs at around 5%. However, non-Brits living here say the atmosphere has changed over the past year and they're not feeling as welcome as they did in the past, as Chris Moore reports.
Laura arrived aged 18 to study anthropology, leaving behind her little town in Sardinia. Since the UK voted to leave the EU, this confirmed Anglophile's been thinking for the first time about applying for British nationality. But reports of rising xenophobia have left her wondering if she's really welcome here.
My trust in common sense and in the common sense and the open-mindedness of British people was compromised for the first time. I'm more aware of the rest of the country, how different the reality is in the rest of the country, which is something I hadn't appreciated before.
The proof's not far away. Here in the borough of Havering, just a half-hour train ride from Remain voting inner London, 7 in 10 voters chose Brexit. Dave Crosby's run the family fish stall on Romford Market since 1974.
Got squid, got smoked haddock.
The 59-year-old says leaving the EU means reclaiming British waters and ending regulation from Brussels. Dave's optimistic for the future. He says voting Brexit was about taking back political control and limiting immigration.
We ain't stopping, like the scientists or doctors, coming in, the people who've got the skills, we welcome them, we've always welcomed them, right? But it's the unskilled, right? The ones that are costing us money all the time.
But many business leaders campaign to Remain, saying the economy needs incomers, skilled or otherwise. Albin Servion from France is boss of Easy Roommate, which sets up house shares for young people in 24 countries. It's HQ'd in London and employs 100 people from 12 nations. For Albin, the UK capital was the obvious choice.
London is a kind of cultural melting pot, and if tomorrow we want to launch in a new country, Poland or Brazil, it's easy to find young talent right here.
London's financial district, the city, is the nerve centre of the UK economy. Many here were wary of Brexit, fearing business and jobs would go, along with the passporting rights that enable trade across the EU. But as he gears up for another dinner at his official residence, the head of the city's corporation says he now believes the government will secure a good deal from Brussels.
As we're pursuing the concept of a bespoke agreement tailor-made to suit the United Kingdom. If it suits the United Kingdom, I have every confidence it will suit Europe as well.
And the fate of EU nationals living in the UK is likely to form a key part of Brexit negotiations.
We're still in London, and with me now I have William Dartmouth. Hello to you. You're an MEP for the UKIP party for the South West and Gibraltar.
Yes.
Of course, the UKIP party was the one really campaigning for that Brexit to happen. Negotiations still haven't started. How do you feel they're going to go?
Well, unfortunately, the powers that be in the European Union are indulging in a lot of posturing, which is not very constructive for anybody concerned. What everybody wants is friendship and free trade.
Free trade, but on what conditions? Because one of the conditions for free trade with the single market is the free movement of people.
The European Union has got approximately 140 trade agreements, and only the 4 trade agreements relating to the EFTA countries have free movement. That is a complete myth.
You can have a trade deal with Canada or Singapore and the EU, but you then have the customs borders.
No, we aren't advocating. We actually aren't. We in UKIP don't advocate that the UK should be part of the customs union after Brexit. What we do advocate is that we should have our own separate relationship.
But then with borders and customs controls on the borders. So you still think it'd be better financially overall on those trade agreements, but when it comes to the City of London, where we are now, 40% of its finance services, it deals with the EU.
Well, that will continue, and the reason it will continue is because it's in the economic interest of everybody for it to continue.
And these multinational companies, that are already buying up buildings abroad?
Well, I think what you're referring to is that JP Morgan has bought one building in Dublin. It doesn't really equal anything on the lines of what's being suggested.
And now, of course, you are also the MEP for Gibraltar, that British overseas territory. We're hearing in the EU guidelines that they say any deal struck with the UK will not apply to Gibraltar unless the UK finds a deal with Spain.
Well,
Could be left with nothing.
Spain is a nation state. The United Kingdom is a nation state. And any problems with Gibraltar should be sorted out on a one-to-one, what in the jargon, bilateral basis between Spain and the United Kingdom. And it's absolutely wrong for the European Union to seek to interfere in that relationship.
But what do you think might be the solution for...
Well, you're asking me to look in a crystal ball. Well, the answer is very simple. Over 10,000 Spanish citizens a day come into work in Gibraltar every day. Common sense should prevail, sanity should prevail, and there should be some situation akin, or perhaps the same as that which we have at the moment, which suits everybody. And that's what should happen, and the European Union should stay out of it. It's none of their business.
OK, so you don't envisage any change in the status between Spain and the UK? And
well, you are asking me to look at a crystal ball, and the answer is no, I don't envisage that, and no, there shouldn't be, for the reason I've just given.
OK, so Gibraltar, of course, one region that people were wondering about. There's also the question of Northern Ireland and Scotland. William Dartmouth, thanks so much for your time and talking to us on France 24.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of the first half of the show, but join us again after the news. We're heading to a different region. One decided it wanted to leave the EU in that referendum last year. We're going to find out what they think about it today, and we'll also be looking at those issues of Northern Ireland and Scotland. See you then.